What's the number one challenge for businesses today?
Workforce development, attracting, recruiting, and retaining people.
And that's why we created this podcast, designed for the frustrated CEO, the under-resourced recruiter, or the overworked manager, to give you the tools to tackle those WTF moments.
It's time to open another workforce therapy file.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Workforce Therapy Files. We're trying a video podcast approach again for this file, and we are joined by Nigel Coelho. Hi, now, Nigel.
Hey, Jamie. Hey, Molley. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
We really
Thanks for
appreciate
coming on the show.
Absolutely. Nigel, one of the things that you may not know is that Molley and I have both founded companies that have worked with individuals in the construction industry. And you also work for a company that basically exists to support the construction industry, correct?
Correct. Exactly. And there's just so much opportunity in construction. It's crazy.
Yeah. So the company that you work for, tell us about.
Absolutely. So I'm the general manager for Agentic Compliance at Lumber. Lumber is a workforce management solution. Specifically, think of time tracking, payroll, onboarding, scheduling, you name it, we have it. It's purpose built for the construction industry. And the reason is there's all these nuances for compliance that need to be taken into account, like union payroll or certified payroll reporting, nuances you wouldn't take into account in any other vertical. And so the idea is if there was going to be a payroll module purpose built for this, why not have those compliance rules built in? And that's exactly what Lumber is. But what I lead is a lot of the specific activities that happen outside the payroll module, specifically around the labor of reading long documents, trying to get a lot of information out. Those are perfect use cases for agentic AI.
Yeah.
So how do we apply that and make people do their job faster? That's my job. Mhm.
Well, typically we like to get to know you as well as the company that you work for. So we're going to pivot for a second and do today's random question. Okay.
Drum roll.
Drum roll. Sure. Drum roll. Are you a drum roll? Wow. I don't know if I'm ever going to ask Molly to do another drum roll. Okay. So let's imagine that you were stranded on a job site and all you have is what's in your vehicle. What would be the most useless thing in your vehicle? And what would be the thing that you would thank past you for putting in your vehicle?
What was the second part again? I think I would.
Well, the most useless thing in your vehicle.
Okay.
Like, this isn't going to help me. And then what's the thing that you'd be like, way to go past me? Way to think ahead, right? Like, what's the thing that you'd be most excited that is in your vehicle?
For a job site, believe it or not, if you had, for example, your time tracking app, I think that's the thing you got to take on site, partly because the amount of compliance issues we run into where people aren't clocking overtime and tracking their time correctly and how it flows into payroll and what they get wrong. Oh my God, that it's just crazy. And people don't get paid. So if I was on the job site, I wouldn't get paid if I wasn't doing my time tracking correctly.
I love that you took a random question and plugged your product.
No, I'm serious. Like it's
Yes. No, I'm proud of you right now, Nigel.
it could be that because on the back end, I just see how messy it is if somebody doesn't log their time correctly. So I'm like,
Sure.
put me in the job site. Let me make sure I log it in correctly.
Yeah. So what's the most useless thing in your car?
The most useless thing, I would say, probably a wrench because I'm not the best with the handyman kind of equipment.
Yeah.
I could do a decent job, but the idea is I'd leave it to the experts. I feel like I'm more of the back office guy getting things done and the messy things organized. But if anything on the let's just say front lines and front field, if it has to come down to the handyman stuff, I'll leave it to the experts.
I love this. Molly, what's your answer?
Well, let's see. Most useless thing in my car. Shoestring.
I think
Why?
shoestring
I don't
has
know.
a large number of applications.
It does, but at the same time, in your car.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So glad that I did. Let's see. Advil, the little travel Advils.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. So I believe that the most useful thing in my car is that I always travel with my soccer mom chair. So I don't know when I might need it, but it's actually come in handy in a number of places I didn't expect to need it. So
you really bring to the table, pull up a chair.
yeah, and I have more than
Yeah.
one because I'm always around somebody that doesn't have a chair. So I
That
feel,
always happens to us on the picnics. We always miss a chair. Now I'm seeing
yeah,
the value. It's high
yeah,
utility, right?
that's right. And there's no reason. I mean, it's not like it's taking up that much more space that I had other plans for. Okay. And then the most useless, I also have like 17 pairs of sunglasses. I don't know that I need.
Yeah.
Do you have a bus? Do you drive a bus? Is that for all your passengers? You can hand
I
them
just
out?
start handing them out as people crawl in. You know, I
Yeah.
don't. That would probably be more practical than the way that we're approaching life.
Seven,
Yeah.
17's a good number. It's one for each day of the week, and just in case, kind of a switch out. In
Yeah,
case,
that's right.
right?
I mean, it's about like what I'm wearing. I don't know. Okay, so your product name is Lumberfy. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's our domain name, but the actual company's name is Lumber. hmm
Lumber. Okay,
hmm
what an appropriate name. Have you been with the company since its start, Nigel, or how long have you been there?
I've been with the company since the beginning of this year in 2026.
Okay.
So the way I joined was through an acquisition they made. So they acquired the company I was running before. And so as a result, that was an AI company that got pulled into Lumber. And so right now I'm leading a lot of the agentic AI capabilities in Lumber. A lot of people think, when they hear our name, we're a wood company. We get that a lot at a lot of conferences. We should actually start to have swag, which is like wood blocks. I just don't
Yes.
Yes.
I don't think people could carry it home or fit it in their bag. That would be the issue,
Yeah.
You do little
Uh,
travel Jengas.
Travel. I'm getting ideas. This is flowing. I like this. I like this.
We do this. We solve problems for people on every episode. I don't know. It just randomly happens.
And you know what? Now I'm thinking about it. They would come to our booth just by seeing the Jenga tower. It's just
Yeah.
like, oh, we'll get a huge line going. It's
Yeah.
funny. We try to do something else. We try to have like a open bar and then have drinks that were HR themed. And guess what the most popular drink was? We named it something. Guess what it was?
Was it the Jamie Swamey?
I I could be the second best. Guess what the first one is?
What's
It was called the HR violation.
Oh,
Oh, I like that.
People were coming up to the booth. They were like, "Give me an HR violation." I was like, "Hey, coming right up," and we were filling them drinks. But I think the
That's
Jenga
great.
Tower might be a close second after the open bar we had. So let's
yeah. I don't feel like you have to choose between them.
exactly.
I think you just figured out the perfect formula.
Yeah.
Okay. So you talked about the messiness of the construction industry. Tell us what problem the company started to solve.
Yeah, so we ended up thinking, how can we end up solving specific problems around workforce shortages in the field? The number one problem, and the founder of the company, the CEO Srisha Ramdas, he had started and sold several companies, so he was really ambitious with the vision for this one, right? Which is, how do I make sure that I can tackle something that's a big problem across America, but more importantly, um, in the construction industry, how do we really make sure we can solve an issue there? And so we had a contact at DPR Construction, kind of asked him, like, what is the one thing we could solve across the board? And what came up over and over again is the labor shortage and the workforce staffing and kind of the workforce management piece of construction. So he ran about 200 interviews and then figured out that, construction payroll, more of the workforce management on the back end was a consistent theme. And so we started with, a core module of payroll and time tracking. Those were probably the two most popular. You have a lot of smaller subcontractors that need to do this reporting, like certified payroll reporting and so on. So this became a way for them to track time in the field, make sure it flows directly into the payroll module, and run that certified payroll. And everything was pretty integrated and made for much more seamless back office operations. So people could focus on the bread and butter, like HVAC, electrical work, things that they want to do in their business and not have to take care of all the paperwork on the back end. So that's how it started. And then we just got more market pull in different directions, like onboarding, ATS, applicant tracking, right? You name it, we were able to do it. And then we ended up being able to cross-sell a lot of these products across the portfolio. Now we do almost anything you can think of on the workforce management side on the back office. And it's really paying dividends because it's one single source of truth for anybody to go in and find this stuff.
With states growing their privacy expectations as it relates to agentic AI, how does your company navigate all of that?
It's funny. The complexity has always been there. We've been through, several decades where people have been trying to solve this. I do think the inflection point where things started to make sense was obviously in 23 when, AI was really taking off around the flavor of generative AI. And, 3 years in now, agentic AI has come a long way. More importantly, on something called multimodal capabilities, which is the idea to read things in the real world, right? One of the models that's really good at that is Google's Gemini model. And so in the field, if you're taking a picture of something or barcode or kind of paperwork or even time cards, it's able to really ingest a lot of that and get the best specific output from it in terms of taking a lot of values in the real world and digitizing it so it flows seamlessly in the back end. That's just one example, but the idea is agentic AI now lends itself well to really be the bridge between the physical world and kind of the digital world. And that hasn't been as possible before. And I think that's why it's such a special time, but more importantly, why this is such a big opportunity.
Nigel, when you think about what it is that the tool is bringing to the table and how it's creating greater efficiencies within the workforce of construction, what is it that gets you most excited about AI in general? What is it that you're like, that's going to be the game changer for all things in construction when it comes to this tool? What are you most excited about?
Yeah, specifically on taking things from the field that weren't able to be captured before. It goes off that theme, like I mentioned, where we're in a once in a lifetime opportunity where you're able to use agentic AI and these models to really take things in the physical world and start to digitize it. But what does that look like? And I'll give you a few examples because then it kind of puts it into practice to understand that, right? An example of this is like our paper time card agent. We have people still clocking in on paper, clock in and clock out when they do their shift. The issue is, it's really hard for people to switch over to an app sometimes or like, adopt new things. They're just used to the way they are. And they've always been doing things like that. So what we do is we say, how do we use agentic AI to meet you where your process is today, right? And I think that is really powerful because change management seems to be the hardest thing for any organization. And every firm is at a different point in their journey of digitization. But agentic AI says, don't change your stack, don't change your process. We'll meet you where you are. And we'll use the capabilities of the models in AI today to get what we need in order to do the back office processes. So I'll give you an example. For paper time card agent, we're able to take a picture of their paper time card, literally, and it's able to digitize those values it's able to see. We've tried all different types of handwriting. It's able to figure it out.
That is incredible, especially for construction.
Exactly.
It's a lot like doctors, the chicken scratch.
I know. We're really testing the limits. My handwriting is only so bad, but I'm pushing the AI to its limits. Trust me. We're at the breaking point. So,
Nigel, are you guys using geo-fencing or any type of like tracking capabilities as well?
yeah, so that's one more use case of the multimodal capability I was telling you about, right? So one thing we do is biometrics and then also geofencing. So biometrics, as in sometimes a buddy might punch in for you and so on. We want to avoid that. And so the idea is you can do a facial scan and then it can figure out, oh, you're actually the person you say you are. And they can cross-reference it with geofencing to figure out in that specific area, that's the exact coordinates you're in right now. And so you're able to take all these different inputs to really make sure you can streamline and check on everything going according to plan, but more importantly, the efficiency of how people are doing their job. If you're an HVAC technician, how many houses you're hitting in a short amount of time, right? How many people and field folks do you need to do a job? Do you need to ramp that up? So the idea is, one, you can even take into account your job costing, how you're going to do this job, but then two, how many people it takes to efficiently do a job end to end, and then really optimize your workforce labor and spend to make sure you can improve your margins as a business. And it goes all the way from like a small HVAC contractor to a general contractor. This problem stays across the board, you know?
I'm hearing you talk and I can hear all of the very positive use cases. And then also hear things like biometrics, surveillance, right? There's all of these pieces that, especially in unionized environments, have some really hard challenges to overcome in terms of how they get applied. So,
Mm-hmm.
what do you do to help companies with adoption for their employees? Because I would imagine that this, especially if it was new to a group or to a company, might be a little bit hard to swallow initially.
Oh,
I
yeah.
remember, I remember when ADP came out with those palm scanners that would
Yeah.
go on
Yeah.
time clocks, and nobody saw the wrath of our employee base coming that we received. So I'm just very curious about that.
No, that's a really good question. And like I said, it goes back to change management. That's quite hard. And to get people and force them to use this is not the way to go. You kind of have to get buy-in from the end user, right? So the idea here then is if they have to move to this app or do the stuff that we were talking about, right? It's going to be a hard pivot. We usually see pilots being really useful, and then we can do a kind of apples to apples comparison of like, this is how you do time tracking in the field today. This is how it is in the app. And this is how like you're seeing the time savings. So usually the pilots are able to really quantify the ROI to them and more importantly, give them a feel of how easier it could make life for them rather than having to do it, through pen and paper, have to make sure they're doing it right and then getting paid late. But like if everything could be streamlined, that's great. Another is we're taking that approach here of using agentic AI, like I said, to meet the people where they are. So say you do have your time tracking app and you've been always used to it. We actually don't force you to move to our app. We say, you know what, that's totally fine. We'll pull in, and usually through APIs, are able to pull in the right information, but also through agentic AI. Like I said, if they're doing paper time card, what we can do is use our paper time card agent, but then make sure that you keep everything the same. So if you do use ADP and you do use some paper time card in terms of like logging your hours, we say, you know what, don't change anything. Lumber is going to do the hard work of stitching together everything on the back, right? So the idea here is we'll do the paper time card agent, we'll extract the values from that paper time card, it flows over, and then we're able to populate it directly into ADP. And so from a user perspective, nothing really changed. Everything was pretty much the same. You just log time the way you do, and you do payroll in ADP. But in the back end, we've done more of the orchestration layer, make sure everything's been taken into account, the accuracy and compliance have been taken care of, and then we plug it back into your system so you can run your daily operations. It's kind of a flavor of agentic AI we have today called headless, which is the idea that you don't really see it. It's working in the background. And happy to talk more about that, but that's kind of the trend we're seeing now. That's getting a lot of market pull just because people want to use AI, but they don't know how. So this is the best use case right now.
Okay. So
So,
filling in a gap.
Nigel, oh, sorry, Jamie, go ahead.
No, Molly, go ahead. I was just reflecting on what you said. Please continue.
So, Nigel, you have, when you speak about this and the industry and this tool, you can see your passion for it. Why construction? What is it about skilled trades, the construction industry that gets you so psyched up about what it is that this tool can do for the workforce in general?
No, 100%. You think about it, and very timely for America's 250th year, right? Like we've come a long way as a country. Construction's only getting started. We have so much to go. And you just think of the opportunity across the 50 states we have. Like there's so much getting built. We have the data centers we got to build for, actually being able to have AI be able to transform these industries. Energy infrastructure that has to power a lot of what's going on in our economy right now, right? And so for these infrastructure builds and so on, there's so much to do to actually get more and more built across the 50 states we have. The problem is right now, there's that demand on one side, but there really is that shortage on the other side of enough people feeling empowered to go into the trades and really make sure they can make a dent, but more importantly, fulfill this demand we have. And that's why I'm a big fan of, registered apprentice programs, getting apprentices involved. A lot of legislation actually terms of federal funding for these infrastructure bills, right, for energy infrastructure, ties to getting apprentices involved on projects. Because we have a shortage of labor, they want to maintain something called a journeyman to apprentice ratio, which is you get a certain number of hours for an apprentice on a project, and you have to basically work with a full-time journeyman. But they're mandating this because they want enough of a pipeline coming into the construction industry to serve our country. And so the way I look at it here is, it's a fulfilling field to be in because there's such a big opportunity ahead. And where else do you get to make, as big an impact in this country as construction, where so much is getting built, but there's so much more to go? And how do we empower people to really pick up the trades, go in and take on a lot of this demand to make sure we can fulfill it? And I think that's where we are. We're at the nexus between the two, the demand, but also supplying a lot of the talent and helping manage the workforce to do it. And where else would you rather be in terms of really making sure this country is set for the next 250 years,
Nice. That's exciting.
It is. Nigel, once a company starts seeing the real labor cost and productivity, what do you think is the most uncomfortable truth that your tools reveal?
Oh, yeah. We see a
scared.
lot of messy stuff on the back end. So what the tools reveal and what's really interesting is, and a lot of people don't know this. Are you guys familiar with the concept of prevailing wage?
Mhm.
Right? And so for the
But
audience,
our listeners might not be.
exactly. And I'll just outline it real quick. But prevailing
Yeah.
wage outlines kind of the baseline wage within a state for a specific trade, like an electrician, an HVAC worker, or someone. The idea is it keeps changing sometimes, and a lot of it is updated online. And so you have to make sure you pay this prevailing wage for that specific state. It's very strict. And any specific construction project that touches public works funding, in the sense federal funding or state funding, right? Think about a public school, a library, a public university. All of them are eligible for state and federal money. But if you do work such as, HVAC work or electrical work, you have to do certified payroll. You actually have to be able to pay that, right? And show that you've paid the prevailing wage for that state or for the federal rate. A lot of the time, people don't want to go with that, and maybe they're a private shop, right? And so they're like, we don't do any public works, and so we're just gonna pay them what we want to pay them. And sure, on the micro, it seems like you're saving costs. Okay, I'm saving this much on wages. But now, like I said, right, with a big amount of funding going into infrastructure, especially the energy infrastructure and the data centers and so on, there's a lot of funding and tax credits tied to making sure you pay the prevailing wage. So even if you're if you're not doing public works, if you just paid a little more to that prevailing wage rate, it unlocks so much more in cost savings that people don't even know about. And it actually introduces what one of our products does, which is called our funding agent. It literally finds the delta in what you're paying and says, if you end up paying a little bit more, this is how much money in terms of tax credits or federal funding you'd be eligible for by just paying prevailing wage. And so I think a lot of people get that wrong. They miss that part. They're like, oh, prevailing wage just means, I get to work on public works projects. But no, it really unlocks so much more about what you could do for the bottom line for your construction, right? So.
Nigel, I feel like I could talk to you for hours, but I have one more question and then I'll stop, put you in the hot seat. When we talk about agentic AI and all the infrastructure that it takes to support an environment where agentic AI is getting added to almost every application that we utilize, how do you respond to customers who have some concern about the impact on the communities and environment where those data centers are placed?
Mm. And that's what I think a lot of people hear about AI and they're like, okay, it's using up a lot of energy. It's kind of impactful. Is that the kind of the thought of thinking?
Yes, energy, water, the the grid, the power grids in the communities. There's all kinds of things that people have talked about. Sound levels. I'm just going off of the stuff that people. There was a data center that was going to go in our backyard, and the
Oh, wow.
reaction was very strong. not technically in our backyard, but close. And the reaction was very strong from the community. And so
Yeah.
I hear all of these amazing things that AI can do, and I recognize what's happening in our population, that we're declining in terms of our overall population. So we're going to need solutions that help us do this. But I'm curious, from a company that's selling an agentic product, how do you feel about the impact on the environment? What are the things that you have to share with individuals that might choose a product like yours?
No, 100%. And that's where I think it's unique in the sense that we're in the construction industry, right? Because a lot of the time, it's such a full circle moment where we're using AI, but what's powering that AI is data centers, which we're helping companies build, right? To do that. And so it's like an end to end. But the idea here is I do get it, right? There is a lot of pushback for these data centers and especially for water consumption and so on. The approach I would take there is how do you bring in the community, especially the fact that, you and a lot of people are living close to it. It is driving energy prices up. Water consumption is huge. How does at least the development of it give back to the community and empower the community that they feel that the the kind of backyard tax, if I would say myself here, is worth it, right? And that's where we're trying to actually come up with good playbooks and actually like an ROI calculator where that prevailing wage that I was talking about, that actually feeds into the mechanism of how we can deal with a lot of this, right? Because if a data center comes into your backyard, the next big thing is it doing enough for your community? Sometimes even hiring a lot of people locally, right? And making sure that they can, if it's going to be there, can they at least benefit from it? And prevailing wage kind of ensures they can get paid enough of a high wage for the job that they're doing with, a big amount of investment in data center. But I do get it on the water consumption side, on the energy side, that's a big concern. And we need to keep our eye on that. And so we constantly do a lot of stuff to really optimize the tokens we end up using. In fact, there's this thing to think about here, which is enterprises could use AI themselves and they end up racking a huge bill, for Anthropic or OpenAI for like how much they're using. Or they can use a third party vertical AI solution like Lumber that abstracts that bill because we get more efficient with the models we use for the specific task. So there's this trend now where in an application, you can break down the application, but you can choose for that for that use case, say, for example, at paper time card. Maybe that's using more, optical character recognition or more image analysis, right? And so we can choose a model that is very efficient in terms of energy consumption. So it doesn't burn a lot on the back end, doesn't incur too much cost, but it's saving those kind of like micro moments in the long term that make a big difference. Same thing for text generation or document analysis. So I think we have an responsibility and obligation to optimize that. But more importantly, the tooling is there to really make sure that we can make sure for the entire workflow, we're choosing the right model for the right task. So it's energy efficient, that we don't spend a lot. And in the grand scheme of things, that ends up actually saving a lot more than what organizations themselves would use, just using ChatGPT or Claude, right? The idea is we're able to optimize that on the back end and make it more industry specific to them because we know the workflows already in construction. And so by even just abstracting this layer for them, we end up doing our part to really save on costs on energy and water consumption at scale in a world where like people want to use AI, but they want to be conscious of how much they're using it, right?
And you're also not putting people's personal information into a tool that wasn't created for it.
No, 100%. And in fact, a lot of the time people are very guarded about doing that with the traditional, ChatGPT and Claude. And so we're able to really have governance and security to make sure how much of what you want is stored in the agent and what is not. We try to make it contextual. Sometimes, people are short-staffed and they add a new payroll manager. A person's like, what were the exceptions again I needed to make for this union and for this electrician? And so we can turn that on if you need it, where where the agent's able to say, oh, for 9 times out of 10, we see you have to apply this rate for this plumber. So it can be a huge like productivity booster for newer employees. Or, if you care about security and governance, then, we can make sure it doesn't retain anything and just make sure workflow for document processing much easier. So,
Very good.
Awesome. Well, Nigel, I know that we went back and forth for a few days and times to make this happen. And I'm so glad that we were able to come together this morning and spend some time with you to learn more about you and your company. And I have to say, as an organization like Incipio, to be able to hear about things like this that are on the market to help our clients become better employers and create a workforce that is truly engaged and excited to come to work on Monday morning. So thank you for your commitment and dedication to figuring out new ways to streamline and create efficiencies for employers and the greater benefit of grace to employees. Thanks for coming on the show today. Now, Jim, close that file.
Thanks for listening to the Workforce Therapy Files. We hope you learned something new, and we're thankful for the time that you spent with us today. If there's a topic you'd like us to discuss, reach out to us. Our contact information's listed in the show notes. Until next time, keep your head up.